All right, Anna Gasteyer, you've been pretty busy this year. You've got Lady Dynamite. You were in Grease Live. Let's
Yeah.
talk. So let's talk. Yeah, let's talk about Lady Dynamite first because it's just come out on Netflix and to great acclaim. Talk about the character that you play on there.
It's unbelievably fun. So the show is obviously the story of very specifically based on Maria Bamford's experience with her own mental illness and struggles with her recovery and mania and depression. And the show was created by Mitch Hurwitz and Pam Brady and Maria. And it was one of those really fascinating processes because really the show is happening in three sort of states at the same time, as you know, as a viewer: mania and depression and kind of present day stasis, I guess would be the words for it. And Maria's kind of struggle to put her life back together after having come to Hollywood, experienced partially just a really classic Hollywood success story and partially fueled by her own mania, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I play this terrible, terrible epitome of the worst things of Hollywood agent and bad influence in her life. Just the most horrendous woman in the world who becomes the most who is a super duper powerful Hollywood agent. So I take place in all the kind of before and mania pieces.
It's just watching the first couple episodes alone, it really is. I don't know how to describe it. It's just, what did you think when you read the script for the first time? Because it's, like you said, it takes place in all these three different states. And it's all just like, it's so all over the place. And it's so like.
It's really, I guess, how would I put it? It's, obviously reading, I'm always fascinated as an actor because I'm not a producer and I'm not a director. And so that last leap between something that's on the page and something that's on screen is a huge leap of faith where you think, well, this is tracking for me as I read it, but I wonder how they're going to cut it and put it together. It's such an incredible little microcosm of reality, I guess, which is what you experience in mental illness, right? And Maria is a beautiful communicator on that subject and a very empathic and kind of extremely relatable and likable face for mental illness. And so reading it, you hope that that story is going to be told as, both as hilariously and ridiculously as it is on the page and as humanly. And I'm really proud of the show. I think I'm prouder of the show than I've been of anything in a very, very long time. I always love the work that I do, and I'm lucky because I'm a comedian, so I get to do lots of fun things. But first of all, Mitch Hurwitz is, I think a genius, and Pam is an incredibly gifted writer who, and the show, as you know, is just decorated with this amazing Inside Baseball all-star lineup of hilarious and ridiculous comedians and really interesting female voices, actually. And as a female in her 40s, I was thrilled to play this role. It was like, it was as exciting as it gets. It's also just like, I like playing people with teeth, and I like playing aggressively unapologetic people, and this was like right in that wheelhouse, So what was surprising to me and delightful and fulfilling was Maria as a scene partner, because she was such a, it's one thing to kind of play this asshole and then another to play an asshole against someone so terribly, terribly likable. And she's such a game tennis player. It was very, very fun to do the scenes with her and with Fred Melamed after, who plays her manager, Bruce, who was just a joy to beat up. And took it on the chin with total, we all had a good sense of humor about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a wonderful cast of comedy actors and, like you said, strong female characters.
Yeah.
Not just you and Maria. I forgot her name for a second. Star of the show.
The title character.
Yeah.
Me and Lady Dynamite.
Yeah, you and Lady Dynamite, yes. But also Lennon Parham.
Lennon is unbelievable. Bridget Everett, just there's an endless list. You even have cameos from like Tig Notaro and, you know, Sarah Silverman. I mean, a really impressive lineup of people. Jenny Slate is in it. Just, it doesn't sort of stop. But, and then there are all these great cameos. Moke Collins actually has a really great recurring role in the show. Obviously, Mary Kay Place is like a comedy idol. So, and she plays Maria's mother. I mean, it's really outrageous, the amount of people. But I think when you get someone like Mitch too, you get a lot of people quick to sign up for that project because he's known for taking risks. And a show like this on Netflix too, I have to say, is something you don't balk at, because among other things, like, this kind of character is no fun to play in a conventional network way, because every other word is blue. The swear words were like the most hilarious. Like, the writers have been let out of their prison cell where they're not only, you know, forsworn to like dang and darn, and we had just a field day with the foul-mouthed evil Karen Grisham. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, definitely it goes. It requires. I love it because it requires a certain amount of focus, I guess, to watch and track and know what's happening. So I don't know if anyone ever told you this too, but in the scripts, the 3 phases that are being the 3 moments in time that are being represented in the show were in different colors. So when we would read it, like, and they obviously made choices, really strong choices about that, you know, like in my costuming and in the Mania, to have this kind of hyperspace, bright Technicolor vibe. And then Duluth has a different tone, which she plays actually within the pilot. So it kind of grabs it. But I have to say too, as a performer, you know, when you first move to LA and get caught on that early wave of whatever it is for each of us. I was in the Groundlings and finally got signed by the big agency and got a few roles, Seinfeld and this and that, and then I got Saturday Night Live. It is like, even for someone without a technical diagnosis, a very manic ride and a very intense ride, and it's in a machine that's hard to trust, you know. And so I love the things that the show says about that as well, in a ridiculous and satisfying way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, going back to that first episode, I had to watch it twice, actually. Well, for one, you know, you want to. It's so dense, you know, like,
yeah,
like all of Mitchell Hurwitz's stuff, Arrested Development. There's so much going on there, and there's like jokes on top of jokes that you might have missed the first time. But also, I mean, you watch it that second time to say, you know, like, to try to figure out what the style and the tone of this really is, you know, because it's so free form, and it's like jazz in a sense, and you're breaking the fourth wall in a lot of instances.
But I think you're onto something about the jazz thing, because it isn't that it's, and I've done shows that have been accused of being tonally inconsistent. I don't think that it's tonally inconsistent. I think it's very aware of the story it's telling. It's just playing with how you're going to hear that tune. And I think that's what makes for really satisfying and interesting television. You know, there's so many subtle jokes. I actually haven't even noticed. Mitch and Pam love like visual gags. They're not patronizing, and that they won't always like pay off everything to you. For example, in the first Karen Grisham scene in Hollywood, where we first meet Maria and Karen Grisham, where she's, you know, congratulating her on making the Grish list, this like super chic list of hot actors in LA. That set was at this Hollywood power lunch place. And I don't know if you caught this, but they were pizza coal ovens being fed by old drafts of scripts that were like they went to, I mean, there was so much coverage of it when we were shooting on the day, and you barely even see it, but you'll see there's like waiters going by with stacks of paper. The name of the restaurant is Lit, but they don't even like hit that at all. It's just a background piece. There's so many things that are tiny little texture jokes like that, which I love, because it's sort of, you know, I hate that term Easter egg, but that's sort of what it is. For the viewer, it respects comedy viewers who are very smart and seasoned at this point, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. So I want to ask you, like, from an actor's standpoint, playing these scenes. I mean, it's your character goes way over the top in some points, you know.
Yes.
Very satisfyingly so.
Although not safe for work. None of my scenes. They're all NSFW.
So as an actor, I mean, can you talk about, because there is a an underlying humanity to all of this too that is so great. I mean, especially
Yeah.
in Maria's character. I mean, can you talk about an actor, as an actor, just finding that right line to walk? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think a lot of it tends to be unconscious, but of course, if it's about storytelling first, and it's about Maria's story. That's what I mean by that. She was such a game scene partner, because I never felt, I felt like all of Karen Grisham, agent, is such an unconscionably discompassionate human being that that I had to play. It was really fun to play those moments where you had just, as an actor, you had to make this conscious choice to ignore the humanity in the scene to the best of the abilities, which sort of points to it, right? And obviously, the less this woman takes the time and care and consideration to worry about anything other than herself and her Faustian agenda, the more we see how Maria is chewed up, or anyone is chewed up and spat out by the Hollywood machine. It's incredibly inhuman the way that she's treated, you know? Does that make sense? And the other thing that was really fun is, and I actually really do think this is a sort of an interesting thing, really powerful CEOs tend to be kind of ADD. And so that was challenging as an actor, just because I had to be on top of the material, because I love the way that really high power, successful, ballsy, you know, executives have to move a mile a minute. And when they're done, they're done. Like, I envy it. They don't have to spend time, you know, saying thank you and, you know, what a joy, and I'll be back in touch and I'll email you about that thing. They're just like on to the next thing. So that was sort of the, that was kind of the motivation for how fast she's moving. Because they're like a little bit like, I got to get this next thing on my next list, you know? So that was less about the lack of humanity and more about a respect for people who can move more quickly and not be so codependent.
Absolutely, yeah.
She's, if anything, not codependent. I envy it. I really do. I admire people like Karen Grisham on some terrible level. It seems very free.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about Grease Live as well. Yeah. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience in doing live television. You came up in Saturday Night Live with one of the great casts of that show. So going into Grease Live, talk about what that experience was like.
It was really interesting for me because it was so obviously, like, the message in my head was exactly what you just said. Oh, you've done live. I think I was the only person in the cast that was a veteran of both live theater and live television. There were people from a lot of theater folk through the Mark Platt and Tommy Kail connections, the director of Hamilton and the producer of Wicked. And but there were, you know, not as many people. I think I was the only one who had done live TV. The thing about Saturday Night Live is, as you know, it's this incredibly well-oiled 40-year-old machine. So while it is live, there is this kind of known structure through which you move to get to that evening. Even though it's chaos and even though it's frenetic, it's a known mania. This was like a brand new kind of shit show. You know, it was just this, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, sorry.
No, it's okay.
You can take the woman out of the Grisham, but you can't take the Grisham out of the woman. But yeah, I mean, because we were on these multiple, they were so ambitious, right? Where they were all these multiple sound stages, and then you have this weird like cross section, which has happened to me a couple of times in my career, where you have all these people that are super experienced stage management, and then you have really super experienced ADs from television, and they sort of do the same things, but they speak slightly different lingo. So logistically, it was just terrifying. And for me, something of a post-traumatic stress disorder, like, because it was sort of like any performer, I'm sure who you've talked over the years, who has been on Saturday Night Live, just dreams about live performance in most high stakes possible way, running and trying to make your costume changes and trying to get on, you know, and they're calling live and whatever. So this sort of felt like that because it was so we did have rehearsal, but it was so unrehearsed in terms of the variables. Obviously the weather and the rain were unpredictable and terrifying in Southern California, where nobody ever expects that. I mean, they were we were moments before we were about to start, they were trying to figure out whether or not Jessie J was going to be changing her traffic and and consequently all of our traffic, because we were moving through that Grease is the Word number into the high school set to begin. And I had, once again, like a very verbal role. She had these giant monologues, so I had a lot just to sort of think about. And so they were trying to decide if the scaffolding was going to blow over. And then, you know, other things like they had a live audience. We'd done a couple dry runs with quote unquote live audiences, but they tended to be people from the lot or, you know, family and friends from Fox. Real live screaming teenagers. It's like a One Direction concert. Like you can't actually hear over them. I've been to a One Direction concert and I had earplugs, you know, but we didn't have earbuds. So thank God I was with Boyz II Men, because I kept just leaning back towards, you know, to hear the tune, because they were sort of humming as we went and into the count, but I couldn't actually hear my cues. So that kind of thing you don't know until you're doing it, you know, but that's when kind of the old sort of steel, I was terrified, really terrified, like, you know, bad dreams and midnight phone calls to my husband. And then, you know, out of the blue, something kicked in, like the second it started, and some steel nerve moment kicked in. I thought, you know what, this is ridiculous. I have a choice for it to be a nightmare or for it to be really fun. And I think I'm gonna make it really fun. And it ended up being intoxicating. It was so incredibly fun. The feat of what they did in terms of those set changes and those golf carts was just staggering and so exciting to be a part of. I felt really lucky. Also, that role is, you know, an iconic role. And Eve Arden is, again, if you're a character actress, you know, zooming through her 40s, like somebody that I remember the role viscerally, and I predate, you know, the VCR as a kid. So I don't even know. I must have seen the movie in the theater 10 times. You know, it was so exciting. So exciting.
Well, you certainly pulled it off. Thank you so much, and congratulations on all your work this year, and it was a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, have a great day.
Okay, you too. Bye, Zach.
Bye, Anne.